With New York's century-old subway system facing a crisis, transportation officials on Tuesday turned to a veteran transit leader credited with turning around Toronto's once beleaguered system to take over the city's buses and subways. The appointment of Andrew Byford as the president of New York City Transit comes on the heels of a series of changes in leadership at the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, which oversees the subway system, aimed at restoring accountability and changing a culture that for years has left the subway without adequate funding or support. Even as the subway's antiquated infrastructure, including its signal systems and tracks, was breaking down at an increasing rate, the money spent on maintenance has remained essentially the same, when adjusted for inflation, as it was 25 years ago, according to a recent investigation by the New York Times. During a news conference in Toronto, Mr. Byford called his new posting arguably the toughest job in transit right now. Mr. Byford will take control of an agency that has often proved intransigent and opaque and dominated by a political dynamic in which elected officials have often used the Transportation Authority to serve their political priorities at the expense of investing sufficiently on the nuts and bolts that could have averted the crisis that has engulfed the transit system. Those decisions have helped create a situation in which just 65% of weekday trains reach their final destination on time, the lowest rate since the transit crisis of the 1970s. Unlike the 70s, when subways covered in graffiti became emblems of urban decay and the city faced a financial meltdown, the current problems are all the more galling to riders and advocates because they come at a time when the city is booming and flush with tax revenues. Exacerbating the problem and making solutions harder to come by, City Hall and Albany remain divided over how to address both the short and long-term financial needs of the subways, a dynamic that Mr. Byford will likely have to learn to navigate quickly in order to reverse the subway's decline. Mr. Byford is a British-born alumnus of both London and Sydney's transit networks, and this will not be his first time dealing with a system in turmoil. When he was named the head of the Toronto Transit Commission, known as TTC, it was facing widespread criticism for delays and overcrowding. There's a recognition that the TTC, which was once an absolute jewel in the province's crown, has lost its way through lack of investment and, I'd say, political influence over the last 30 years, he said in an interview with Toronto Life in 2015. Over the last several years, he has been credited with modernizing the system and paying more attention to addressing consumer need. In 2017, the TTC was awarded the American Public Transportation Association Award for Outstanding Transit System of the Year. Toronto's reputation as a livable city with good transit has helped it grow to more than 2.8 million people, on par with the population of Chicago. Still, the challenge he faces in New York will likely dwarf what he has faced in the past.